These conditions are amazing. I wish I was a little bit better at, well, I'm not very good at woodland photography at all because I've never really done it, but in these conditions, woodland photography always fascinates me. So I thought this morning, even though it was incredibly hard to get up, when I looked out the window and saw the fog, I thought I'm not going to have a better opportunity to come and give it a go. Yeah, here I am. It's the last chance I'm also going to get to come out and do some photography this year as well. So it's a nice little finish to the year, I think. But don't really know what I'm doing when it comes to woodland photography. I'm just experimenting. I think I have something here with this little path going under this branch of the tree that's coming over the path. It's all covered in like mossy, algae, whatever it is, technical term. So I'm just going to go for about 50 millimeters. I'm boosting my ISO because I'm handheld, I've not got a tripod. F8, 40th of a second. Something like that, and see what it turns out like. Just look how bleak this is. It's absolutely incredible. It looks amazing. Fair to say though that I feel a little bit out of my depth when I'm photographing stuff like this, just because I've not done a huge amount of it before, but it's nice to do something different and just experiment and learn something new. So yeah, it's nice to challenge myself a little bit. I think I might head off the beaten path a little bit. There's some fallen down trees over there, so I might go and explore that. I think one thing that I find interesting about woodland photography is typically when you see woodland photos, they're isolating certain subjects and trying to find patterns in the trees and compositions that look visually pleasing, and that looks amazing. However, I like photographs that are wider, sort of around about the 35 to 50 millimeter focal range, and I like photographs that tell a story. Now, as amazing as woodland photos look, and they do look incredible, I love woodland photography, that I'm not great at that sort of thing. So I'm trying to find ways to incorporate more of a story into the woodland photographs. And I think this is the perfect example of that for me. And it shows that you can still look at the wider scene. So we've got this, I don't know how well you can see it here because it's very foggy, but there's this tree that's kind of bending over and we've got the path that's going underneath it. And that, to me, tells a little bit more of a story because of the path that is suggesting where's that path going. And that, with the fog as well, it's perfectly separating the tree from the background. If we didn't have the fog, it would just blend into the background with the trees that are running down the left-hand side there. So this, for me, is more my sort of woodland photography. Camera's going off. And that's something that I've spoken about trying to do before, is take influences from one genre of photography into your own genre of photography. And that, for me, is the perfect example of that. And if you wanted to, you could wait for a dog walker, like I've also managed to do, and get them walking underneath the tree. I don't think that one worked quite as well though, because I was rushing it a little bit, but looks okay. Got another dog walker. Quick. I think that one works better. It's in bright yellow coat as well. That's 35mm, f8, ISO 640. Ouch. Next location. These conditions are absolutely amazing. This is one of those things that if it wasn't foggy wouldn't look very interesting at all, but with the fog it just looks really eerie. I think I'm stood in the middle of a polo field. which is something I can't say I've ever done before. I didn't even know this was here until I drove past it. But it looked quite interesting, just in this little one, what is it, shed building? Just looked quite interesting when I drove past. I thought I'd stop. Don't know if I should be here. Did see a dog walker or two, but yeah, it's nice to be out actually. What is it about fog that just makes the most pointless things look, I don't know, intriguing? I think this morning I might have got some of my favourite photos of the year, especially the ones on the polo field where it's just a sheet of white fog. They're very minimalist, and I like that sort of photography a lot, so I'm quite happy with those. I even quite like the woodland ones that I did, even though they're not great at all. There's a huge amount that goes into woodland photography that I don't know about because I've never done it before, as I mentioned before, and I have a huge amount of respect for people like Nigel Danson that spend a lot of time doing woodland photography, and they are incredible at it. So I've got a lot to learn when it comes to woodland photography, but it was a lot of fun to do something different and try and challenge myself in another way and take inspiration, as I mentioned before, from another area of photography into my own area of photography. So that was quite a nice thing to do. I think as well, challenging yourself with your photography is a really good thing to do every now and then, because it can be very easy to just fall into the trap of photographing the same things over and over, and you're not necessarily going to be learning by doing that, and it can become a little bit stale sometimes just because you're doing the same thing over and over again. So by doing something a little bit different, maybe once a month go out and shoot something entirely different, just challenge yourself. It's a good way to help broaden your horizons as a photographer and see different things and get different perspectives from other things that you don't necessarily shoot all the time. And just on that as well, that then helps you to create more interesting images when you do come back to shooting your own thing, because you are finding ways of merging two different worlds, two different types of photography, and that is almost breaking the rules a little bit, and that is what makes photography and images interesting. You don't always have to stick with things like the rule of thirds and everything has to be on specific lines. You can do whatever you want. Photography is a creative art form. It's all about expression and showing the way you see the world. So go and break the rules a little bit, have fun with it. That's what it's all about. So I thought it would be a good idea to end the year with a little Q&A, because I've never done one of these before and I thought it might be a little bit of fun, and it's something that I want to do more of over the next year or so, is start to build a little bit more of a community around photography on this YouTube channel and on my newsletter as well, which is linked down below if you're not yet subscribed to it. And if you do subscribe to it, you also get a free Lightroom preset as well. Building a community around photography is something that I'm really interested in, because this channel is very, very close to 10,000 subscribers, which is absolutely insane to me. It's taken a long time and a lot of hard work to get here, but it's not taken for granted at all. And it is massively appreciated that you take your time to watch these videos and comment and subscribe, and all of that is massively appreciated. So let's just jump straight in with the Q&A, and Coco the Cat 98491 asks, I have always struggled with expectations regarding vlogging, settings and exposure. Should ISO be set to auto or manual? How do you maintain consistent exposure between different handheld vlogging shots, since outdoor lighting changes with every change in video angle? And that is a really good question. Vlogging, I think if you're vlogging, there's two different ways you could go about it, and it's entirely up to you. There's no right or wrong when it comes to something like this. And all you're trying to do at the end of the day is tell your story the way that you want to tell it. When it comes to camera settings and vlogging though, it is entirely down to you and what you want to try and do with it. If you are into filmmaking, you might want to make sure that everything is bang on for every single shot. That then will mean that you have to plan shots in advance and take time to get your camera set up correctly. And if that is something you want to do, you might want to use something like a grey card so that you can get perfect exposure, and a white card so that you can get the perfect white balance every single time. If this is something that you've never seen before or you want to know more about, let me know and I will make a video on how to get perfect exposure using one of these. But if you just want to document and capture memories and whatever is going on around you, there is nothing wrong with having your camera in auto ISO, or maybe cranking your shutter speed a little bit higher, which then will have an impact on things like motion blur. But yeah, it's entirely down to you. Don't feel pressure to have perfect exposure every single time. There are so many people that vlog on YouTube that just have their camera in full auto. It is entirely down to you and whatever you want to do with it. But if you are into filmmaking and things like that and you want it to look good, taking a little bit more time over getting your camera settings correct is going to be useful, but it does mean that it can be a little bit of a pain when you're outside, because every single time you need to check your exposure and your white balance. The one thing that I would do, if you're not going to change your white balance all of the time, the only thing I would do is to fix your white balance at something like daylight if you are out filming in the middle of day, for example, so sort of around 5600 Kelvin. But you mentioned about expectations when it comes to camera settings as well, but that isn't really anything that you need to worry about, because the truth is that 90% of people watching your videos on YouTube aren't going to notice that maybe you crank your shutter speed and there's less motion blur, or the fact that your exposure changes slightly because you were filming in auto ISO is not something that you realistically need to worry about. So hopefully that helps you out a little bit and you can just go and vlog freely and have fun with it. Ryan Salas asks, why is upgrading to a good quality lens more important than a camera body? That is a very good question, and I think there's two different ways in which you can look at this. Photography and video are all about capturing light, and that is all your camera is doing. It is capturing the light that it can see in front of it. And the main thing determining what your camera can see is the lens that you put on the front of it. And every lens is different. They all have different levels of sharpness, distortion, depth of field, and to some extent color as well. Certain lenses will shift to different colors. So a high quality lens, for example, will have a far superior optical performance over a lower quality lens, which means that your camera is going to be able to capture a much cleaner image. It's the equivalent of if you wear glasses, having a clean pair of glasses and a dirty, dusty pair of glasses. You're going to be able to see things much clearer through clean glasses, whereas the dusty pair is going to be a little bit fuzzy and you're not going to be able to see things as clearly. The other thing to think about is longevity. A lens is going to last much longer than a camera body. Lenses last forever. The only thing that is really going to improve in lenses, because lenses are that good now optically, the only thing that's really going to improve is autofocus performance, but even that now is really good and there's nothing to worry about. A good example is the lens I'm using right now. I recently upgraded to this, the Sigma 24-70 f2.8, and I went for the older one over the newer one that has better autofocus performance, but the autofocus performance on this is still really good. I've never had an issue with it. So it's just something to think about, but a lens will last you a lot longer than a camera body. Lenses also hold their value really well as well. If you keep them well, how many times can I say well in one sentence? But if you keep them well maintained, they will keep their value. So if, for example, you wanted to upgrade your lens in a few years' time, if you have looked after your lens, you're probably going to get a good return on that. So they are a good investment. Going back to optical performance very quickly, if you were to have a high megapixel camera body with a low quality lens on it, that camera body is going to be underperforming because the lens determines the quality of light that that camera is capturing at that time, even though that camera is capable of capturing really high quality images. So Ryan, hopefully that answers your question. Let's be honest, lenses are a little bit boring when you compare them to camera bodies because they don't really do much, but they're arguably more important. Invest in lenses, even though they're boring. Brian asks, how is it going with the Lumix S9 and the 45mm prime lens? Have you tried the 24mm to make a compact wide kit? I'm interested in a pocketable camera to go with my S5 Mark IIX, though the 20-60 lens is hard to beat on a walk. The Lumix S9 is still a massively underrated camera. I absolutely love it. I used it to film while I was outside in the earlier part of this video. That is the camera that I will use when I go out and about, just because it's so small and compact and so capable. The Sigma 45mm prime, again, is a brilliant lens. And if I'm just going out and I want a camera with me for photography, just to do a bit of street photography or to capture what's going on around me, for example, capture memories, the 45mm is what I will have on the S9 pretty much all of the time. I haven't tried the 24mm version just because I like this version so much, and most of my images that I take are around 40 to 50mm. I know what you're saying about the 20-60 on the S9. It is a bit too big when you add it onto the body of the S9. So what I would recommend instead is this, which is the new Lumix 18-40 kit lens. And this is the lens I used to film as well while I was out and about doing photography in the earlier part of this video. It is so light. That is the size of it. So it's not much difference in size to the 45mm Sigma. It does extend a little bit when you want to use it. So that is at 18mm, that is 40mm. But when you're traveling and carrying it around, you can retract it and it is absolutely tiny. But this lens has basically changed the way that I use the Lumix S9, and it has meant that I use it more. Hopefully they will bring out some primes that are similar size to this very soon, but this has changed the way that I use the Lumix S9. I love it. I have also made a video about this lens, which I will link up here or down here, and I'll link it in the description for you as well, so you can go and check it out. Chris Harvey asks, any photography goals for 2025? That's a good question. I have a few, I think. So, middle to end of this year, I fell into the trap of just not going out and shooting. I didn't shoot anywhere near enough. And I think that's because I've got into the habit of thinking that there's nothing to shoot in my local area and I needed to travel further afield to go and shoot anything remotely interesting. So one thing that I want to do as of now is to just start getting out for an hour or two here and there in my localish area and just exploring more around here, just so I can keep taking photos and not go for weeks on end without picking my camera up for me and only doing work stuff, for example. The other thing that I'm really interested in doing very soon is printing. I know we've spoken about this quite a lot recently. Printing my work is 100% something that I want to do. I've got old prints on my wall, but my photography has changed so much since I took these, and I've not printed any of my work recently. So I definitely want to get my own printer and just print as much as I can for fun. And I think that has a huge impact on our photography as well, because we can learn so much from it in different ways that we do from just looking at our images on the screen. And I just want to fill my walls with my own work as well. And printing is a whole new world I don't know a huge amount about, and it's something that I'm massively interested in. I think that will give me even more hunger to go out and want to shoot all of the time. So I'm really excited to get into that. But as well as that, with having a printer, that therefore allows me to start selling prints on the side a little bit as well, which is something that I've always wanted to do. And hopefully over the next few months, 6 months or something like that, I can start to look into that. So I'm massively interested in that. And finally, Paul M asks, how is the new IKEA desk working out with studio improvements? Honestly, that is one of the best things I've done this year. I absolutely love it. It is so good. I genuinely think changing your creative space around, that's really loud, isn't it? I genuinely think that changing your creative space around when you are feeling a little bit flat and unmotivated is one of the best things that you could possibly do, because having a space where you feel like you can be creative and enjoy spending time in that space is so important. Yeah, I love it. It's one of the best things I've done this year, because I was genuinely feeling completely just flat in here. But now, Holly never sees me. I'm always in here now. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing. So that is it for 2024. Thank you for all of your questions. It is massively appreciated. And as I mentioned before, it is hugely appreciated that you even take the time to watch these videos and comment on them and ask questions. It is not taken for granted at all. And it's something that I, again, want to start doing more of in 2025, is building a bit more of a community around this channel. So yeah, I hope everyone had an amazing Christmas and is looking forward to New Year. I shall see you very soon in the next video.